Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down two different storms that are coming to the United States over the next week. And these two different storms will bring a variety of problems, including the potential for snow that could lead to a winter storm in areas like the northern plains, Midwest, and the Northeast. And the second storm will be a bit more concerning, with a bit more of an increased risk for severe weather for parts of the country, while another part of the country will be dealing with another potential for a winter storm. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin first with what's happening right now in the United States today. And we will begin with the Midwest, and this is an area that we actually have a large low pressure system that is bringing a strong northerly and northwesterly wind. What this is all leading to right now is a lot more cold air across areas in the Midwest and the Northeast, and we've already had this cold air go as far south as areas like the Southeast, including Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. Many areas this morning were below freezing as far south as southern Alabama. So it got really cold this morning. Obviously, I hope that you protected your sensitive vegetation in those areas. We had a pretty rare, again, freeze this morning. It doesn't happen that often, especially this late into March. We are now unofficially, by the way, the first day of spring. Believe it or not, today is the first day of spring at approximately 10 p.m. tonight. So again, really rare stuff overall back down in the Southeast. But notice over in the Great Plains, we have nothing rare happening here. Actually, it's really quiet right now. It's not something we see too often in March, but with that being said, it is very quiet. Hardly any cloud cover across the entire Great Plains, and even on the West Coast and the Rocky Mountains, there's really nothing happening right now. It's really nice weather for the most part, but that will change as we go into later this week and eventually as we go into the weekend, as two different big storms are on the horizon, and we're going to break those down for you in detail here in just a moment. Before we go into detail with that, I do want to talk more about the jet stream. This gives us an idea of the weather patterns that are happening across the United States, and this will give us an idea of what these large storms will be doing large scale over the next week or so. So let's begin with what's happening right now. Again, remember that we have that low pressure system back up in Canada that is ushering all that colder air into areas like the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and even into the Southeast United States. But behind this, we actually have a very interesting setup back over in the western tier of the United States. We do have a high pressure system that's located back over in the Pacific Northwest. This is actually going to bring the potential for some record-breaking high temperatures in areas like Washington today. And then further down to the south, we have a low pressure system that is actually a closed low, and what that means is that we have a closed contour here, even in the jet stream. So this is a closed low pressure system, and usually with these, they're much slower than an ordinary low pressure system that's attached to the jet stream. So that's really the big characteristic with this one, and that is actually very evident because this low pressure system has been in the upper levels for the last several days, and it has barely moved ever since about Saturday or so. This is actually what brought some showers and thunderstorms to Texas both Saturday and Sunday, so pretty interesting stuff there. Once we go into Tuesday, late Tuesday into Wednesday, though, that low pressure system will begin to attach to the subtropical jet stream. That's the jet stream down here. That's back down in the southern plains and along the Gulf Coast. Here's your polar jet stream, by the way. That's where all the cold air lies, is back up here in the northeastern parts of the United States and back into Canada. Once we go into Wednesday and Thursday, that high pressure system will start to kind of fizzle and weaken overall. Small little low pressure system will move across the southern plains Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. A low-end threat for severe weather will exist in areas like Texas going into tomorrow and as well as on Thursday. Once we go into Friday and a Saturday, things relatively quiet across the country. A very large cold air mass will be sitting, by the way, back up in the northern plains, the Midwest, and back into the north and east, and that's actually going to allow for the potential for some snowfall on both, not just Friday, but as well as even going into early next week. This is what we're talking about going to Saturday into Sunday. That large-scale storm will come from the Pacific Ocean. This is likely going to be one of the largest storms that we've seen so far in 2024, purely due to its size, but also it could bring some pretty intense thunderstorms. We might be talking about the potential for a significant severe weather event if there's a lot of warm air across areas in the southern plains and enough moisture. That's one of the biggest things that we need to watch for, is if that'll be available. If that's all available, we very easily could see some sort of significant severe weather event across parts of the southern plains and back into the southeast, and that's still relatively uncertain, but I'll be talking more about it in a few minutes on where exactly we might see some severe weather. This is what we're looking at Sunday into Monday. Notice that low pressure system is going to be located here by late Monday. Very strong southwesterly flow, which would promote the threat of severe weather, especially in the Mississippi Valley, back into the southern plains, and as well as the southeast. In addition to this is a negatively tilted trough, which means that there will be a pretty significant moisture pull on Monday across areas in the Mississippi Valley and the southeast. And then once we go into late Tuesday into Wednesday, that low pressure system moves to the north northeast, and on the backside of this low, we might even get some snowfall across areas in the Midwest, so we'll be watching that very closely as well. Now let's talk more about these two big storms that'll be impacting the United States over the next several days. We're going to begin with the first one, and this one's going to bring a bit more of a snow potential, especially to areas in the Midwest. So beginning with the Midwest, this is what we're talking about going into Wednesday. Overall, pretty dry. A little bit of lake effect snow in Michigan. Pretty typical, by the way, for March. Not really anything too out of the ordinary there. Most of that will not accumulate to much, maybe an inch or two if you're lucky. Once we go into Thursday morning, things still relatively dry. Nothing abnormal here. But once we go into late Thursday night to Friday morning, that is when we'll be watching for a low pressure system to move across areas in the northern plains and the Midwest. And what we're going to be watching for here is the potential for snow. Notice this as we go into Friday morning, right around when you wake up around 6 or so in the morning, we'll have some snow falling across areas in the Midwest. And notice a lot of the snow is light. Any of those light blues are representing light snowfall. But what's interesting is that the European model in particular does show a band of moderate to heavy snowfall between areas in Iowa back into areas like northern Illinois and as well as into southern Michigan, which would promote the potential for some heavier snowfall leading to some more significant snowfall accumulation. This is eventually as we get closer to lunchtime as well. Still some light to moderate snowfall falling across areas in the Midwest, and by the late afternoon hours that snow will begin to move into areas like Michigan with the potential for some light to moderate snowfall still existing. But one key thing is how much snow will actually fall here, because if we're going to be talking about the potential for some moderate snowfall, that should accumulate pretty easily, right? Well, here's the European model, and this is just one indication of how much snow we could see. Notice that for the most part across anywhere in the Midwest, including northern Illinois, we're in the ballpark of 2 to 5 inches of snow for a widespread area, with perhaps the potential in some of those heavier bands of snow to see somewhere in the ballpark of 4 to 8 inches of snow, with the highest snowfall accumulation total from the European model being around 9 inches of snow in northeast Iowa. But if we look at two different other computer models, like the GFS model, for example, it shows a lot more snowfall, but obviously further to the north, because this is not including the Chicago suburbs. It's actually all the way back up in Wisconsin and Michigan, and it's not even in southern Michigan, for the record. So it's definitely a further northerly track here, so there's definitely some uncertainty of exactly where the heaviest of the snowfall will fall. And then here's the NAM model showing almost no snow across much of the Midwest, and even Iowa would be left out of any snowfall potential. So what does this all mean? Well, one, there's a lot of uncertainty with this particular event, but I do agree more with the European model in terms of the placement of snow and how much snow we'll see. I think this is very realistic. Obviously, we're still a few days out, so there will be some changes to the forecast, but I do think many areas, especially across Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, will see between 2 to 4 inches of snowfall, with some isolated spots here, maybe in the ballpark of 4 to 8 inches of snow. So obviously, make sure you stay tuned, subscribe to the channel. We'll be keeping you posted with the latest as we get closer to this event, because there is definitely still some uncertainty here with how much snow we'll see and exactly where all that snow falls. Now let's talk more about this large storm that is coming to the United States late this weekend into early next week. And to look at that, we're going to look at the future radar here on the European model, beginning with Thursday into Friday. Again, notice that low pressure system moving across the Midwest, what we just talked about a moment ago. That'll bring some snowfall to areas in the Midwest, and eventually it'll move into the Northeast as we go into Saturday. Relatively, how much snow falls there still remains uncertain due to the fact we still don't really know exactly how much snow is going to fall in the Midwest. So stay tuned. Again, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Once we go into Sunday, we'll be eventually watching that low pressure system moving over the Rocky Mountains. This could actually bring another winter storm to areas in the northern plains. Now, the storm that's going to be moving through the Midwest, by the way, it's not really certain right now if that'll be a winter storm. It might be a winter storm for a few locations, but for the most part, I think that'll be mostly just a winter weather advisory sort of event, where we'll see, again, in the ballpark of 2 to 4 inches of snow, with maybe a few isolated locations higher than that. But this event going into Sunday very easily could be a winter storm, perhaps even significant, across areas in the upper Midwest and as well as back through the northern plains. Notice this as we go into Sunday night, showers and thunderstorms stretching from areas in Kansas back into Texas. It is still uncertain whether we will be talking about a significant severe weather event going into late Sunday night. I don't think we will be. I think the better chance of that would be on Monday. Notice this as we go into Monday around about 12 o'clock or so. Thunderstorms will be lined up from Missouri back into Texas, and more than likely we'll be talking about a linear line of storms, meaning that this could very easily pose the threat of some significant damaging winds, perhaps even a few tornadoes. But this still remains uncertain due to the fact we don't know exactly how much moisture there'll be here, and if the temperatures will be warm enough in this area, or if this will be a bit more of a cold core system. Once we go into late Tuesday, eventually the storm moves to the northeast. We'll be watching for some snowfall on the back end of this low pressure system in the Midwest, but exactly where this low pressure system tracks still remains uncertain, because if it's further up here to the north, the snow will not be falling in the Midwest. But if it's further down to the south, there is a better chance that we'll be talking about snow in the Midwest, but probably nothing too significant overall, maybe just a few inches of snow, but this rare winter storm potential in the end of March. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.